Good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
Can't complain.
Oh, you could if you just tried a little harder. How's life treating you?
Life is good, Dave.
Good.
I'm almost nervous. It's so good.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, it is.
Good morning, Miller. Hey, Miller.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Rob's on his way too.
Super. I'm trying to figure out how I could get this green cast to my face and everything to disappear, but I guess I'm just going to be slightly hulking out. I'm not sure what's going on.
It's your alien experiments in the corner,
I guess I'm not sure what's. Let's figure out oh, that's worse. I don't know.
Oh, that was a little warmer. That better?
Maybe. Anyway, I'm not going to be that vain. I can just look a little ill. So I don't know if Paula's going to be on. Did you see her news?
I saw they bought some land.
I'm sorry? Yeah, bought some land. Yeah, so they're doing they and Trevor and Joanna are doing the intentional community permaculture thing, which I'm stoked about. That's very exciting.
It's amazing.
I don't know if she'll be on or not today. I haven't heard from her, so we'll see.
Is that what he said? He hasn't heard from me.
Let's
No,
see.
no.
I'm going to stop
What's
the share.
the
Ooh.
setting? What's he talking about me?
Now Tony's green.
Whoa, that's some weirdness.
What's that? Hold on, Maurice. Okay.
You were having the max headroom effect there for a minute, Tony. You had like static and multicolors, and I was having throwbacks to the 80s suddenly.
I think I need a new laptop.
Hey, Rob.
If you can hear me, I'm having audio problems. Give me
Oh,
a
no.
sec.
Okay.
Dave's green.
Yeah,
Tony's staticky.
all
Rob
kinds
can't
of
hear.
Okay, there we go.
all kinds of technical issues today. Just
Okay.
so well, it's good to see y'all. I think it's just going to be us four today. Melissa's not able to be on today. She's planning on getting on next week. So and I haven't heard from Paula, but I'm not sure if she's planning to get on today. So I summoned her. Hey, Paula,
Hey,
how's it going?
oh, it's going great. Look at this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What's that white stuff?
It's about probably 5 or 6 inches of white stuff that's been coming and going now for about a week. And as beautiful as it is, I have no practice driving on icy roads until recently.
Oh my. Hey,
Oh, how are you?
we're doing good. Your ears must have been burning. We're just talking about you.
No,
Yeah.
what have I done?
Well, it was exciting news that y'all purchased some land and are
Yeah.
making a go with this permaculture community kind of thing. That's exciting.
Yeah, Joanna and Trevor already have 3 woofers and tiny homes living there helping out, and they're wanting to add a lot of others so that it will be a place where people come and go who are interested in organic gardening and learn about it.
That's exciting.
It is. I'm not sure how excited I am about having 3 grandchildren quite that close to me. I do better in small doses.
Sure. Like that's always been my hang up about intentional community is I'm not sure intentional aloneness is part of my thing too. So
Well, of the 57 acres, I told Joe I would only agree to it if our house was on one end of it and everything else was on the other end.
Right. I hear that. That's
okay,
very cool though.
You're the only one I see on here. Am I just not getting the other people?
We're all on. Are you on the phone or iPad?
I'm on an iPad.
Yeah,
Move over.
I hear you. There you are.
Yeah. So yeah, if depending on the view on the iPad or iPhone, it may just show one of us when we're talking, but you can move back and forth to get the gallery view.
Okay.
So for those of you who are streaming, who are tuning in, welcome. This is St. Junia's House Church Online. This is kind of how we do house church. It's informal. It's we gather and we act like we're in someone's living room doing worship. So if you are tuning in on Facebook or YouTube, if you don't mind clicking like or just leave a comment like where you're watching from, that way we have a record of your being with us today. We'd love to see that. So I love hearing the kid noises in the background.
You may hear them a lot.
Well, that's very house church like, isn't it? So we'll get started. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the liturgy up on the screen. And whoops. And Tony, if you would be the liturgist,
Absolutely.
And we'll just keep the usual roles today, that would be great. Ready when you are.
All right. Good morning. Today is the birthday of John Donne, whose holy sonnets combine compassion, passionate poetry with Christian mysticism. Greetings. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Hear these words of invitation.
The hospitality of God knows no bounds.
The love of God is immeasurable.
The generosity of God is beyond our wildest dreams.
We gather today as invited ones,
As beloved ones,
as blessed ones.
draw near and let us break the bread of life.
Psalms 41-9. The great I am is my light and my salvation. Should I fear anyone?
The sovereign God is a fortress protecting my life. Should I be frightened of anything?
I have asked one thing from she who is. It's all I seek.
To live in the eternal one's house all the days of my life, seeing the Creator's beauty and constantly adoring her temple.
Because she will shelter me in her own dwelling during troubling times.
She will hide me in a secret place in her own tent. She will set me up high, safe on a rock.
Now my head is higher than the enemy surrounding me, and I will offer sacrifices in God's tent, sacrifices, shouts of joy.
I will sing and praise the womb of life.
Eternal One, listen to my voice when I cry out. Have mercy on me and answer me.
Come, my heart says, seek God's face. Great Spirit, I do seek your face.
Please don't hide it from me. Don't push your servant aside angrily. You have been my help.
God who saves me, don't neglect me. Don't leave me all alone.
Isaiah 9:1-4. Nonetheless, those who are in distress won't be exhausted. At an earlier time, God cursed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but later he glorified the way of the sea, the far side of the Jordan, and the Galilee of the nations. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in a pitch dark land, light has dawned. You have made the nations great. You have made the nation great. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as those who divide plunder rejoice. As on the day of Midian, you shattered the yoke that burdened them, the staff of their shoulders, and the rod of their oppressor.
John 1:29-42.
Oh, just
Now when
FYI, I didn't change the scripture reading, so this is actually from Matthew. So my apologies.
Oh, okay. Somewhere in Matthew. um, Now, when Jesus heard that John was arrested, he went to Galilee. He left Nazareth and settled in Capernaum, which lies alongside the sea in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. This fulfilled what Isaiah the prophet said. Land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, alongside the sea, across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who lived in the dark have seen a great light, and a light has come upon those who lived in the region and in shadow of death. From that time, Jesus began to announce, "Change your hearts and lives. Here comes the kingdom of heaven." As Jesus walked alongside the Galilee Sea, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, throwing fish nets into the sea, because they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," he said, "and I'll show you how to fish for people." Right away, they left their nets and followed him. Continuing on, he saw another set of brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with Zebedee, their father, repairing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Jesus traveled throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues. He announced the good news of the kingdom and healed every disease and sickness among the people. May God bless the hearing of this word.
Thanks be to God.
One of John Donne's most famous poems is Holy Sonnet 10. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkest thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, or yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but by thy pictures be, much pleasure then from thee, much more must flow, and soonest our best men with thee do go. Rest of their bones and soul's delivery, Thou art a slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men. In dust with poison, war, and sickness dwell, and poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. And better than thy stroke, while swellest thou then, one short sleep pass, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die.
We'll go into a time of prayer. I'll get us started. And those of you who are watching, if you want to lift up a prayer request, you can put it in the chat or the comments. Would someone monitor Facebook? And thank you, Tony. I'll monitor YouTube for prayer requests. Let's go to God in prayer. Holy One who is hidden by light, we give you thanks that your glory is expressed all around us if we just have eyes to see. We give you thanks both for the snow and for the hints of spring. We give you thanks for the lengthening days. We give you thanks that we woke up this morning with air in our lungs and a heartbeat in our chest. We give you thanks that we woke up with people around us who love us and who are grateful that we are in the world. We give you thanks for all the pleasures of mind and senses, of thought and beauty. God, in this January, this season of new beginnings and changes in our lives, we're made aware of all that could be. We lift up to you those whose hope has been smashed by war, by poverty, by constant humiliation, by frustration. We lift up to you those who have a hard time dreaming or hoping because they're afraid of what will come in their lives that's negative. We lift up to you ourselves when we often have a hard time hoping. Give us grace. Give us a sense of peace. And give us a sense of justice to right wrongs where we can. And in the face of overwhelming injustice, God, give us hope that your justice will triumph eventually. We lift up to you people and situations who are close to us, and I invite those of you listening to share.
For the people of Ukraine and all those living in the obscenity of war.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Prayers for the support and healing of Selma.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the Pascal and Clark families.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For
And for
Vicky,
Manette. Sorry, go ahead.
for Vicky McCarty.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Manette and the loss of her husband.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Stanley Hurst,
Lord, hear our prayer.
in gratitude for Camille's aunt's healing.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Amy Marie.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For
Rob.
Miles. For Miles.
Lord,
Rob's
hear our
own.
prayer.
For Rob's uncles Merle and Mason.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Madison.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Thankfulness for working to put out the Moody fires.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those attacked in the Asian community of Los Angeles last night.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Healing for Ted Davis.
Lord, hear our prayer.
for transgender children and adults.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Gratitude for new beginnings.
Lord, hear our prayer.
God, for all these things that we've lifted up and for the things that we don't know how to pray, we give you thanks that you hear the prayers of our hearts and that you answer. And we join with Jesus in the prayer that he taught us. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your reign come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For yours is the sovereignty, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. So I wanted to talk about today's passage, the famous Jesus walking by Galilee passage. And I actually, honestly, I kind of struggled with what I wanted to say about it. We had such a wonderful discussion last week, I thought, about a different encounter between Jesus and the disciples that's related in John. This one is the one where he's walking by and he calls out, and Peter and Andrew and James and John just leave their nets and follow. And as I was reading it, I couldn't quite get into just this action of them leaving behind their nets and following, but I wanted to set the scene. Because I think part of this is thinking about how the author is telling the story. The author's telling the story from the end already. Like, he knows how it turns out. Everyone who's hearing the story knows who Jesus is, what he did. They all know about Easter. They all know about the early, they're part of a movement already. And this is going back and saying, how did it get started? How did this thing begin? And it begins by talking about geography, like places. And so I wanted to, I promise this isn't just because I wanted to share photos of my summer vacation, but I went to Israel twice in 2006 and then again in 2019. And so slideshow time. I want to share my pictures. And I really want to help orient to what hang on, I need to, pardon me. Oh, stop. I really wanted to help orient to what the place looks like. And so I'm going to start with Google Maps. I realize I have to pull it out here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to try to share it up now. Okay, so Google Maps, here's the modern day. It says Sea of Galilee. Sea is a really generous term. It's a lake. Okay, it's not in the ocean. It's a big honking lake. And this is of course, Google Maps. So you can see way over here is Nazareth. See Nazareth right there? So that's Jesus's hometown. He eventually, when he was an adult, or at some point, he moved, and he probably came along this valley. Oh, stop Google Maps. He probably came along this valley right here, the Valley of the Doves. And up here is a gorgeous view. The Arbel is a mountain, and it looks out over the Galilee. I'm going to show you a picture of that in just a minute. And Tiberias was a city that was being built when Jesus was a youngin. He moved up here to Capernaum. And the interesting thing about Capernaum is it's a place where there's a lot of basalt rock. This is geography, right? Or geology. And basalt is a really hard rock. They used it in grinding, in grindstones. And so they manufactured grindstones in Capernaum. And a lot of the buildings were made out of this hard basalt rock. Jesus was a builder. The word is teknon. It's where we get the word tectonic plates, and also technology comes from that word. He's a builder, right? And so he moved to Capernaum, where they were cutting this really hard stone, and you can find it exported all over the region. So back in the day, they were exporting millstones because this was really hard rock. That's what you need if you're going to grind grain, right? So he probably was familiar with that industry. He may have been building with some of the hardest rock around. So you see Capernaum is there. Over here is Migdal, possibly where Mary Magdalene was from. She was possibly from Migdal. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of that. But that's it. It's a big lake. And so Jesus's home was up here in Capernaum. He probably met the disciples somewhere around here and that little coastal area right there. So I'm going to show you some pictures now of this region. Let's see. And some of the cool stuff about it. Okay. There we go. I'm going to start here. So this is a view of, let's see if I can make that bigger.
Hit the green one in the corner up top.
Yeah, the problem is because of Zoom, I'll move it over here. Did it follow me? I don't think it's followed me. Let me try again. Share screen. There we go. There we are. Okay, so this is a panorama from the Arbel, from a mountain, and here is the Galilee, and it's quite a lovely place. So standing up here, again, it's a picture, and every time you take a picture of a beautiful scene, it flattens it so you can't really tell what's going on. But down here is Migdal, and it's really steep here. I mean, it's like you're standing here and you look down and the people look like ants, and you want to say, I can see my house if you live there, right? It's that kind of beautiful spot. I included this because I love that morning. And you can really see we're way up. You look down in the tiny little road down there. I'm sure Jesus probably went to this spot. It's like the most scenic place around, and you can see the whole Galilee, and it's cool to be standing up there and think at some point Jesus and the disciples probably, let's take a hike up the Arbel and picnic and see what's going on. I mean, it's just a beautiful spot. This is a church on the northern part of Galilee. It's the I believe it's St. Peter's Church. But while we were there, this is in 2006, this dude in a fishing boat pulled up, and he was net fishing. And this is 2,000 years after the events of the Bible. His boat is about the same size as the fishing boats of the day. Here is a actual fishing boat that was recovered from Galilee, probably from about the time of Jesus. Doesn't look too seaworthy now, but you can tell it's a pretty cool boat. You can even look at the ribs of the boat, and you can see that, I mean, they were working with some pretty primitive technology, but it was effective, and things haven't changed a lot. If you're in a fishing boat today, it's about the same size, right? They analyzed the wood of the boat, and they found that it was wood from all over. This boat was basically built from scrap wood that served a purpose. 12 different kinds of wood in this boat from all over the region, because trees were not that common. You couldn't just go out and cut down a tree because the trees had all been cut already. So they had to import a lot of wood. Today, of course, this is looking back up to the mountain where we were looking over the Galilee. Today, of course, there's a big industry of tourism. You can go and get on a boat, and they drive you all across the Sea of Galilee. And if you have a pastor with you, frequently you will have communion while you're out there on the Sea of Galilee. That's just the thing they do. Sometimes they have speakers on the boat, and they blast Amy Grant, and it's kind of annoying. I like Amy Grant, but I just it's kind of hard for me to be in the moment when they're blasting contemporary Christian music from the 90s so loudly. This is sitting in the Galilee, on the Galilee Lake, looking up toward the Mount of the Beatitudes. So the place where Jesus probably, or traditionally, gave the Sermon on the Mount, right? Again, beautiful, beautiful region. This is the synagogue in Capernaum where Jesus may have gone. Now, this construction is from more recently. I think it's maybe from 200, 280. And so the actual synagogue where Jesus preached was probably near here, may have been the same spot. But this is what remains of Capernaum. And you can just see the foundations of the houses and all this dark basalt rock. And if you look down here, you see these rounded basalt stones. Those are millstones. So that was, like I said, that was the big export. So you find today in the archaeological sites, a lot of the places where they were doing the construction. And there's a place in Capernaum, there's a church that's built over a ruin. It's a ruin of there's actually two churches, foundations here. You see the smaller church here and the larger church foundation here. And then there's a church built over those foundations. And you can actually see this right here is, I think this may be, I may have messed that up. This may be the earlier church. This is the next church. And then this is the big one. But inside here on these foundation stones were apartments. This was built over what archaeologists say the traditional site of Peter's mother-in-law's house. So now we don't really know if this was Peter's mother-in-law's house, but you know the story in Matthew where Jesus heals the guy that they lower through the ceiling? That's set here. Jesus could have lived in this apartment building. There are several passages where it says Jesus went home. Well, this would have been home, right? Most people in Capernaum lived in apartments. They were called insulae, like island, insular, it's kind of like an island floating there. You would have, they could be 2 or 3 stories tall, and they would be around a central courtyard. Anyway, so today you can go to this spot, and the reason this church is built over is that it's got a glass floor, and you can look down into the ruins. It's a cool spot. Did Jesus actually sleep there? I don't know. Maybe. It's kind of cool to think he probably knew the place, even if it wasn't his house. Anyway, so Peter's mother-in-law's house. And last week I talked about the mikveh, the ritual bath. This is a mikveh in Migdal. So if you go to Migdal, you can see places where people took ritual baths as part of their religious practice. And there's also a synagogue in Migdal, and I wanted to include this because you see this very complex mosaic that's in the floor. So if you went to the synagogue in Migdal, it would have had this beautiful inlaid mosaic floor. Again, it looks old because it's 2,000 years old, but there would be a day where this was shiny and bright and a reminder that this is a holy spot, right? So anyway, I wanted to share those with you just to kind of put it in context that Galilee is a real place. It's not oftentimes in our minds when we tell these stories, it's kind of in Never Never Land, or maybe we try to set it up like it looks in a movie or something. It's a real place. You can go and visit. It's cool to walk by the Sea of Galilee and imagine this scene happening. So we don't know if Jesus knew, in this author's story, if Jesus knew James and John and Peter and Andrew prior to walking by and saying, "Hey, follow me." According to the John story, they met earlier, right? But in this story, Jesus walks by, he's got a simple message. It's a repeat of what John the Baptist was saying. The kingdom of God is here. change your hearts and minds. And they drop what they're doing and they say, okay, and they join up to follow this guy. Now, again, think about both the place and the fact that they're telling this from the future. This is like a flashback, right? The author who's telling the story to the people who were present, this is a flashback for all of them. This is how things got started. There was John the Baptist preaching this message. He went to prison. Jesus came along, said basically the same thing, and these disciples joined up and followed him. Peter and Andrew and James and John were his first followers. So with that background, I wanted to ask, do you have an experience of being recruited? Do you have an experience of someone telling you, hey, I want you to join my team? And before, I'm going to give you a minute to think. I'm going to share a couple of different stories. One is a story about not being asked, and the other is a story about being asked. Okay, so I think I don't know who has this experience, but there were times on the playground when I was picked last. That is a lousy feeling, especially if it happens more than once. If it happens several times in a row. You begin to feel like people don't want you around. It is a lonely feeling. I got picked last occasionally. Actually, I say occasionally, frequently, when I was in 4th, 5th, 6th grade. I didn't hit my growth spurt until I was in high school. So I was kind of a small kid. People would say, oh, you're so tall. No, I was just skinny. I looked tall to my parents and grandparents, but when we lined up, I was definitely in a lower quarter. And so on a lot of, I also wasn't the strongest. So on a lot of things I was picked last. And it is a lousy feeling. So those of you who've been picked last know what that feels like. To be recruited, to have someone say, hey, I want you part of my team, can be an amazing feeling. I know a lot of us are very busy, and the idea of being recruited is not that exciting to some of us right now. But think about what it would be like to have someone who's saying, I'm going to be part of this change. Like we are going to change the world. Come be part of my team. And Peter and Andrew, James and John decide this is an opportunity that's too good to pass up, right? So being recruited is how this thing starts out. So do you have a story, or do you have a time when you were recruited, when someone made you feel like you were an important part of what they were going to do?
Dave,
Yeah.
It's amazing what different mindsets do. I was always picked last in any kind of sports thing growing up, and I was always relieved to be picked last because it meant I probably wouldn't get a turn at bat, and I didn't have to worry about it. But the time I was recruited, and all through late elementary, junior high, high school, all through it, whenever there was a program, I was asked to be the narrator. And all the other kids were singing and I was narrating. Felt real good about that. I thought I must be amazing until I was in college and started working on a degree in elementary education and had to take a class called Teaching Music in Elementary Schools. And the professor, Dr. Roy Woods, reached a point where he said, okay, you're going to have some kids that are never going to be able to sing, and they're going to ruin every program you ever have. And there's 3 things you can do with them. You can make them the page turner for the piano player, you can make them the curtain puller for the stage, or you can make them the narrator.
Ouch.
Yeah. I felt good about it while I was being recruited, but later the truth came out.
Thank you, Paula.
I'm so glad Paula mentioned that about my voice is kind of gone. But I'm so glad Paula mentioned that about not wanting to play, because I was not very athletic. So like not being picked for an athletic team as a child was almost a blessing in disguise, because I was also rather awkward. So thanks for that, Paula, because I was like, no, let me be last. Like, let me be last. But I find it more now that people want me to be part of things. Like just in the last week, I got a call from someone asking me to be a part of the statewide organization, and I'm always leery that now. Like, why do you want me to be a part of that? And so like it's an interesting feeling. I think with the disciples, it was probably more palatable to them because they understood what Jesus was doing and wanted to participate in it. But when something's not even on your radar and someone comes to you and say, hey, I want you to be a part of this, organize, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. So like and it happens a lot. Like it happens a whole lot to me when and I'm like, I'm always wondering, like, why do you want me to be a part of it? So yeah, it's a weird feeling for me. I don't know if I really like it or not.
I hear that. Others?
Well, okay. So I have had some interesting, recruiting experiences professionally. And Miller was, reminding me of some of those. I don't know that I necessarily need to unpack any particular details, but one thing that does come to mind is the idea that, when people are recruiting you, they're telling you all the good stuff. And there's a whole other layer where you have to then ask yourself, well, what are they not telling me? And is their mouth writing checks that they can't actually cash, right? Yeah. Also, I just brief aside, like thinking about the New Testament passage, the way you contextualized it, Dave, it makes me think about the way we talk about like family history. The fact that this is being written after the fact and it's telling people what happened. So it's like, if Kira asks one day, oh, well, why did we move to Washington? Oh, well, my friend asked me if I wanted to apply for this job, and we got really excited, and we dropped everything and went. Like, well, not in 20 minutes that didn't happen, right?
Right.
So I do wonder about, did all this actually unfold, over a much more protracted process? But when you're telling people about it later, it's just, he invited them, and they, like they dropped everything. Like they changed. Yeah. What that means is they changed, what their daily life was like and what was organizing everything for them and how they spent their time. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was just like, what? Oh yeah, okay. What does all these fish rot? We're done here.
Yeah. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Rob, because if you hadn't, I was going to bring this up because I do think that's an important bit here. One of the things one of the reasons I wanted to share these pictures of Capernaum and Migdal and places is that these were small places. I mean, this wasn't like Jesus and James and John and Peter and Andrew, they knew each other. This wasn't like some unknown guy just walked up. Most likely. Anyway, go ahead, Tony.
Rob brought up a couple of things for me. Like one, like not knowing, like they only tell you the good stuff. Like, do you think the disciples really would have followed Jesus that they knew the Muslim would be beheaded and ran out of town? Like, did you really sign up for that? Or were you just trying to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ? The other thing is, like, when I look at you've taught me to like look at the gospels in different ways, like from all the different versions of like the resurrection to like all the other stories that are being told differently by different preachers. So like there is a different preaching style with all of the disciples. And like for me, John to me is like the one that's most empirical. Like he lets you know that they already had a pre-existing relationship with Jesus, which meant that when Jesus came around, it went like, drop your nets and follow me. Like, okay, let's go, Jesus.
Yeah.
But then you have like the other ones who like do what I call like the testalize Like, you ever been in church and you hear somebody tell this ridiculous story, like, that really didn't happen like that. And so, like, when you hear the story about, Jesus just strolling through Galilee, like, hey, girls, drop your nets and follow me. Okay, let's drop these nets. Nobody does that. Like, that is that
Right.
total epitome of, I want to stylize this and make it the magical Jesus with the telepathy that's controlling me. Like, no, this is, context is my word for 2023. Like, I want context. I want context on everything. You just can't tell me a story without giving me context on it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's what I was thinking about. Like, okay, so John told it, okay, the story, but then we want to make the Joel Osteen version of the dropping of the nets. I don't even know y'all for real. Y'all just gonna come follow me. Like, nobody does that.
Right. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, Paula.
Growing up in a world, in an evangelical right-wing world, I was taught over and over that the Bible had the answer for everything. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible tells you what you need to know to have a relationship with God and with your neighbors. And it leaves a whole lot out. Mary's pregnancy and delivery didn't happen in 2 chapters. It took 9 months, but they just took the parts that you had to know to get to the point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm totally convinced that Jesus and these men knew each other probably quite well before they followed him. It was a decision that took a while, but when he invited them, they were ready.
Yeah. No, thank you, Paula. I think both of this, I think creating some background context is kind of what we're hungry for here, right? Matthew emphasizes the fact that, hey, they left behind a job that they knew, and that they were this is a career change, and for them, this is like a midlife career change. I mean, it's a big deal, right? But I think clearly there's some context that Matthew leaves out. Anyway, go ahead, Miller.
I think I have this sort of suspicion. I have like a negative image of recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
I think, because I was also the kid who got picked last and was sort of ignored, and not just for sports, but the excuse me. And then I think about like situations like as an adult being invited. Oh, would you like to have like a full face makeup thing done just for free, just for fun? It's a party. And then all of a sudden you're getting recruited to join like a Mary Kay, I call it a coven, but little like, multi-level marketing thing. And it's like, oh, I mean, yeah. Or, as a child, my family and I went on these like we got like a free hotel stay for listening to like a condo timeshare kind of a presentation, and like you're like, okay, we'll just go to this one little thing, there'll be donuts, and then we can go get on with our vacation, but it lasts all day.
6 hours later.
and I remember as a kid just sitting there like, where are the donuts? I want the donuts.
Right.
So, I mean, I feel like there's no question that Peter and the other guys had to have had some idea of what this guy was doing.
Right.
Because otherwise they were really dumb.
Do you think Jesus offered them donuts?
the local equivalent,
Right. Yeah.
On the other hand, being recruited can feel so good.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started the Baptist seminary and was one of the only females there were groups that would go out to eat after class frequently. And I'm pretty introverted and was quiet and didn't get invited for the first few times. But the time when someone finally walked over to me and said, Paula, would you like to come with us to lunch? It just felt wonderful to be included.
Yeah.
It's not all bad.
Yeah. Thank you. Tony?
Again, I'm not trying to be included. Like, I've gotten this far and I'm like, I don't trust people Um, because it's always something. Like it's always something. Like when you think about even just the recruitment, like let's just think about professional sports recruitment. When they do the combine, aka the new slave auction, you're looking for people to fill gaps on your football team with talents that don't exist. It's not like they want you because of who you are, they want you because of what you can give them. So it's like in the words of Rosanna Down, it's always something. It's always something. The other thing I wanted to say was like context is important even for believers, and I think a lot of us have been like hoodwinked and bamboozled into you don't need to know the context. Just need to know thus what saith the Lord, and it's like I don't know, like I don't. This feels kind of icky because not you end up in Panama drinking Kool-Aid and falling out and throwing up on every place. Like you need to have context and know what these people want. There's a show that I just got into called Evil on Paramount that stars Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage. It is so good, y'all. It's about these paranormal investigators that are investigating demonic possessions. So you have Mike Coulter, who is a practicing priest. Well, he's trying to get ready to be a priest. He gets this psychologist and then this other guy who's a tech guy, and they go around trying to explain all these demonic possessions that keep happening. And I just got to this one thing where they really were like, "Well, I don't know about this one. This one might be real." But like, there's always that little bit of doubt, and that's why I love Saint Junia because it's okay to doubt. Like it's okay to have questions. It's okay to need context. Because if not, then people are going to take advantage and use you.
Yeah. Well, and I think, so I do want to say, and this is floating out there. I thought if someone didn't bring it up, I would mention it. Rob Bell, who many of you know was sort of ex-evangelical, put his own spin on this and created some background. And again, I want to say I approach all of context creation as a work of imagination, right? But he talked about how in the cultural expectation of the time, that lots of Jewish families wanted their boys to grow up and be a traveling rabbi, to have that this was kind of the pinnacle of this, like the NFL draft, like you're saying, like this is a big deal for those families. And his take on it was that James and John, Peter and Andrew were not chosen. And so when Jesus comes along and chooses them, they drop their nets because they're so eager. Oh, someone did finally pick me. And I think that's an interesting perspective. It could be true. But I always think it's important to say most of this is a work of imagination, right? It could be true. That could be a way to explain their desire to drop their nets and follow. I'll say something else in a minute, but Rob, go ahead. I want you to go ahead.
I mean, so the thought that I'm having is sort of picking up on something that Tony was saying. Like, I think recruitment benefits from a prior relationship, right? I'm thinking about the fact that, like, okay, so I've had a job where somebody made an introduction, right? Or I've been approached by someone because we worked together before and there's a new opportunity. I hired someone in the past and then, people go their separate ways, and later on it's like, oh, I need that person for this, right? And you reach out. That is so different from cold calling. I'm thinking about, somebody comes knocking at our door these days, we don't even want to answer it. It's more like, get on the floor, all the lights off, right? They're selling something. They're
call somebody from an unknown phone number.
Yeah.
Like, just you want no part of it, right? And I don't even answer my phone if I don't know the number, right? And actually, the other day I answered the phone because I thought, oh, what is this? Well, they're selling something, right? So, like, the idea that there had to be a prior relationship there for this recruitment to have any success, right? Suddenly seems really important to me. And so, as a work of imagination, like Dave was talking about. My headcanon is now that Jesus the builder built Peter's house, and they have this prior relationship of construction. And so later on, when Jesus says, "On this rock I build my church," there's like a personal idiom there that
Ooh, I
harkens
like that.
back to when Jesus built his house for him. So anyway.
Oh, I like that. That's good fanfic. I like
the,
that.
The fifth gospel according to Rob.
So yeah, no, I love the fanfic. I'm gonna tell you, and I think that's a great story. I could see that. What a wonderful explainer that would be, right? To go back, that's the prequel that we need to write. That will be like, yeah, this is how they know each other. So
and at the time, Peter was really mad because Jesus underdid the job.
Ooh, nice. I do want to share something that I think for me, this is and one of the reasons I kind of struggled with this passage is that I'm in a midlife career change. I mean, I went back to school to get a master's of mental health counseling, in part because the world is ending. No, I mean, seriously, Jesus, the message Jesus is preaching is change your hearts and minds. Like, and the word there, I like the way it's translated here because it's often translated as repent, and repent is associated with you lousy sinners, get right with God because things are about to get real, and prepare to meet your God. I mean, it's a threatening kind of thing. Repent or metanoia just means have a larger mind, because the kingdom is here, the kingdom's at hand. And so I feel like the fishermen must have taken that message to heart, right? Things are changing. You can't keep doing what you're doing in light of this change. And so for me, what I've been wrestling with for the last couple of years, well, last decade, has been the world is changing. You can't just keep doing things the way they've always been done. Like you're gonna have to do something different. And so I do have a feeling like maybe the disciples had that same sense. This is kind of my personal entry into the text, which is that things are changing in a big way. What you're doing is not sustainable. We need to think about how you're going to participate in what's coming. And I like to think, again, this is kind of me reading myself into the story. I like to think that they may have been in the same kind of position, that it was like, we could fish, but there's a bigger thing here that needs our attention. And it may be that this is just what we have to do. This is maybe what we're called to do in this moment. We talk about call, and this is Jesus calling the disciples, and that word vocation means to call. And we sort of have a theology of vocation, but I wanted to turn it around a little bit and think about also to be recruited. What does it mean to be called or to be summoned to be part of something when you feel like, yeah, things have got to change and I need to be part of it. Anyway, go ahead, Miller.
Yeah. I appreciate the focus on change and obviously we've been talking about context this whole time, because I was sort of trying to dig down and think, why would the prevailing opinion of this passage be this, like, they didn't know him from anybody, mm-hmm. and Jesus just said, come, do this, and they're like, okay, and then they leave. I think it's because that's sort of how we treat like religion nowadays. Like, yeah. Just do it, don't ask questions. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to your authority figures. Yeah. Mm-hmm. and that I much prefer the idea that these guys had a perspective on what was going on around them politically, mm-hmm. and religiously, whatever else, and they felt a need, rather than just blind obedience.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Tony?
Yeah, I want to lift up two comments. One is from Camille on Facebook. She says, just finished reading a story of an ancestor called American Priestess and the Story of the American Colony in Jerusalem. At the time, this group was seen as suspiciously cult-like, but in history, the humanitarian work they left in their wake has become respected and held in high regard. It makes me wonder if there were some in Jesus's community who were suspicious, but history has remembered the good works. I'm sure they were suspicious. I'm suspicious now.
Thank you for that, Camille.
And Miller, do you want to get Miriam's comment? Do you want me to do it? She did one earlier.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Miriam says, in this version, given the beautiful location, family, and community, a lucrative business, the fishermen had to give up a lot. Jesus had to have done some fast, compelling verbiage for them to readily give it up in a quick minute.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good. Yeah. Other thoughts about I do actually have one more thing I want to share. So we talked about John, and then Matthew, the disciples are in the story, they're recruited pretty abruptly. In Luke, there's an event that immediately precedes this, and that's Jesus goes to his hometown of Nazareth and preaches and nearly gets thrown off a cliff. So Rob, one of my backstories is Jesus realized I need some disciples who are pretty strong and can fight off a crowd that tries to throw me off a cliff. So the first person he thinks of is fishermen who are used to throwing nets. These will be my bouncers. I need some bodyguards. So possibly Jesus was like, all right, who can handle themselves in a crowd? I'll pick the guy named The Rock. How about that?
Yeah,
we totally just watched Jaws. So like, I'm thinking of Quint now.
Look, I might go to hell for this, but we already knew his dad was going to leave him to his own devices.
Right. Ooh, yeah. Where's family? Come on, brothers, sisters, family. They didn't even defend. Anyway, so I do think there's a lot of ways to read the backstory here, and I appreciate y'all for kind of engaging in that work of imagination with me. But so someone read Teresa's comment
here. Yeah, I'll read it. First, let me just say it makes sense to me that, like, honestly, it's kind of like Jesus starting a business. Like, he's been thinking about starting his own business. They probably talked about it off and on for a while. They probably told him, you're going to need some muscle. Oh, no, I'll be fine. Right? And then he goes out there and it's like, you were right. They're like, we know we're right. Okay, here we go. So Teresa says,
thank you.
I never was part of a group in a positive way until band, where the freaks and geeks assembled. Even then, I had to sort of force my way into the group and earn my place. Being picked last is life for some of us. But those of us who are the rejects need community too. Even those of us who tend to reject prematurely before we are rejected. Band taught me that. One change that I'm seeing more and more lately is those kinds of communities springing up that us weirdos can be accepted as we are. Dave weirded me out when I started at St. J because he actively recruited me. It was the strangest thing. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Teresa. That means a lot. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that's, when I felt called to start a church, it was, I wanted a church for people who didn't like church or who had been hurt or burned by church in the past, because I feel so much like even the word ecclesia means the kicked out ones. I mean, the word for church, the ecclesia, called out or kicked out. So I feel like that's the true representation of who church is. But anyway, thanks so much. Again, thank you for a rich discussion. Let me go ahead and pull the liturgy back up, and if y'all can take us home, that would be good.
I just want to say on Teresa's comment, Dave, you remember when we met and I was like, screw church, I'm not going. When my father said it. And then I was like, y'all ain't even got no music. Like, nope. But I'm glad I'm here.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, y'all. Spirit of God, with your holy breath, you cleanse the hearts and minds of your people. You comfort them when they are in sorrow. You lead them when they wander from the way. You kindle them when they are cold. You knot them together when they are at variance, and you enrich them with many and various gifts. We beseech you daily to increase those gifts which you have entrusted to us, that your light before us and within us, we may pass through this world without stumbling and without straying. Amen.
God is love. Nothing is wasted. All things shall be well. Go in peace.
Thank you all for being with us today. Thanks also to those of you who have tuned in on Facebook or YouTube. We meet every Sunday at 10. Love to have you return. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to stop the live stream, and those of you on Zoom, if you'll stick around for just a minute more.